Hey everyone, have you ever thought about what constitutes self-care or what qualifies as self-care and what does not? Tune into this video and we're going to discuss what self-care is, what it isn't, and even some self-care tips and some self-care ideas.
Any stories shared in this podcast have had names and details changed for the confidentiality of clients. Any resemblance to someone real is coincidental.
Hello everybody, thank you for joining us for another episode. Today we are going to talk about self-care. Specifically, we're going to talk about why self-care is an important part of being in therapy and being successful in therapy, and also probably also covering what self-care is not, because self-care is one of those buzzwords that everyone loves.
Everybody does love to talk about this lately, self-care and all of the things you can do for self-care. And I think that it's important for people to recognize, because we're talking about, well, why doesn't therapy work? And sometimes therapy doesn't work because people aren't prioritizing self-care. But we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly that even means.
Yeah, so self-care is like going and getting a spa weekend, right?
I know that that's a dig at me. I just want to throw out there, and then maybe we jump into some self-care ideas or even some self-care tips on this, right? I may have mentioned this in previous episodes that we've recorded, but one of the thoughts that goes through my mind when we get to this stage of therapy about talking about self-care is our follow-through on, if I give homework for self-care, the follow-through is usually poor. I don't know what your guys' experience is like.
Yeah.
Okay. I always find that interesting because let's just make up some numbers. Let's say it takes you somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes to commute to therapy. You'll spend an hour with me, and then you'll 20 to 30 minutes back home. That's a 2-hour chunk, and I recognize that's only a week, right? But a 2-hour chunk per week that you will come and we will talk through things. But I don't know that I've been overly successful at getting the self-care to be done, but you'll give me the 2 hours. I would love, as a therapist, for that 2 hours to be invested in a half hour, 4 days a week, rather than therapy. I know that's not always how this works, right? Sometimes it's the therapy portion is there. But self-care can be that important when you get to that stage of therapy. And so keep in mind that self-care it has to be a priority, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk self-care.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it has to be a priority. Therapy can't help you if there are a lot of things you need to do to take care of yourself and you're not doing them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing some of those basic things like sleeping, showering, setting limits with your screen time, all of these things that are not really all that fun, and that lots of times people don't really like to consider to be self-care because it's not something like going out and getting a massage or taking a whole Friday to go out with friends or something like that. But, there are a lot of these little self-care kinds of things that make a huge difference in whether your mental health is going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that's the important part, is emphasizing that self-care isn't something that you do once a week or once a month, but it's the small things that you do every single day. That's what constitutes like prioritizing your self-care, is making time to make sure you are doing your basic hygiene things or eating enough food, or maybe it's important for you to make time for yourself to read a book for 20 minutes a day or something, engage in some kind of hobby. That's the kind of self-care we're talking about. We're not that there's not a place for those other big things, but that's maybe the glamorous version of self-care. This is like the real actual helpful version of self-care.
Yeah, and again, it's not very glamorous, and I think sometimes when we talk to people about these things, it sort of seems silly that we're talking about, hey, we want you to wake up in the morning and have a few minutes to stretch before you turn to your phone or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Some of those things sound so silly, but it really is the things that make the biggest difference.
I just want to throw out an example of the little things you're talking about. I've been messing around with my diet for the last couple of weeks, and I'll find that at 2:00 in the afternoon, my eyes are really, really dry. My energy level is low, and even my clients probably, if I'm not extra peppy, are probably like, "Are you okay?" And it's because I'm in a calorie deficiency, and last night I fell asleep putting my little boy to sleep. My wife had to come in and like wake me up. And it's like, oh, I'm tired all the time because I'm eating less. And so I've noticed that the self-care portion for me this week on just food has been not good. And it's had a direct effect on my energy levels and even physiologically with my dry eyes, right? So making sure that you just eat adequately, like that's huge. Not to say there isn't room for a massage, Jaden, but
Like you would know.
yeah, I wouldn't. Okay, so if you guys were going to throw out a couple of tips to decide self-care yes, self-care no, like if this thing is self-care yes or self-care no, like what tips would you throw out there?
So for me, I always think about things that make me to feel more emotionally stable. That is what self-care is to me. So I think that my morning routine is a pretty decent example of what I do for self-care. I am not a morning person. I don't love mornings. I don't love waking up. But I mean, it's a necessity. So what I do in the morning is I set an alarm nice and early. I get up and I try to exercise for at least a half hour. Then I take a shower. Then I do some spiritual study time, and then I eat breakfast and spend a few minutes with my family. Every single day, it looks just like that.
Do you eat the same thing for breakfast every day?
Every single day.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
What's the secret? What is it?
I actually only have a handful of almonds for breakfast every day.
Do you?
Sometimes if I'm really hungry, have a banana with it.
Wow.
Psycho behavior.
For
Well,
real.
but here's the thing. I love pancakes for breakfast, and if I eat pancakes for breakfast, I'm going to be in a coma a half hour later.
It's dessert for breakfast.
Right. I'm going to feel terrible. And so would pancakes for breakfast be self-care? Well, it would be a treat for me, but I really don't see it as being self-care because it doesn't contribute to the emotional stability that I have through the day. If I feel that crash, well, that crashes my energy level, but it's also my emotional resilience as well that goes downhill when something like that happens.
Treating yourself all the time is not self-care.
That is not self-care. And
Oh,
it's
I like that.
Yeah, that's really true though. I mean, because it's not, self-care is not always a treat. Sometimes it's actually a real pain. I don't know that I always want to have the same thing for breakfast, and I definitely don't want to get out of bed and work out every morning, but I know I'll feel a ton better if I do.
Yeah, I like that. I think I follow probably a similar principle when talking to my clients about it. The importance of taking care of like your basic health needs, because when you don't, those become stressors. And so I guess I think of self-care things as like if you don't wake up and shower and brush your teeth, you're gonna feel gross the rest of the day, and it's gonna stress you out that you need to get these things done. Or if you have like a task that's waiting for you or a chore that needs to be done, those will weigh on you all day, and like you can avoid doing them, but that sucks. So take care of the things you need to take care of, while also I think making a little bit of time every day for things that are either like relaxing or enjoyable for you also, whether it's reading a book or watching a TV show at night or something.
Yeah, it's one of the things I wanted to ask too is, do you kind of have like a guideline on like a time frame that it should look like? Like, do you need an hour every day to do self-care? Is it just as effective if you do 10 minutes? Like, what, do you guys have any thoughts on that? I don't
know if I have specific timelines I suggest, but the most important part is just doing it every day. It's hard because everyone's life looks so different, but this might sound weird, but like part of maybe good self-care is the routine of getting up and getting ready and going to work. Like, so self-care doesn't mean you need to like take a week off work or something or take the day off. Maybe it can in an extreme situation, but doing your day-to-day stuff, like your wake up, get ready for work, go to work, get home, cook dinner, put your kids to bed, right? Like, that's all actually really important to have that routine. And so if you're talking about like the fun parts of self-care, watching a movie, reading a book, whatever, that might not be a lot of time. It might just be at the end of the day when you can squeeze it in, but I don't know. I guess that's a long answer to your question, which is I don't think the time necessarily matters as long as you're doing it every day.
Well, and I think sometimes you have to think about a bit of that like compound effect. So let's say in your mornings you don't love mornings and you're going to just throw a couple of things in there. So maybe you get a healthy breakfast and maybe you do 10 minutes of reading, 10 minutes of exercise, 10 minutes of connecting with a family member, right? So maybe like 40 minutes total. Well, 40 minutes added up every single day of the week. By the time that you get to the end of the week, you've actually spent a really significant amount of time developing your physical health, developing your mental health, developing your knowledge, developing your relationships. And it was really only these little 10-minute chunks at a time. So I don't think it's necessary that you plan on a whole specific, I have to have an hour every day. 10 minutes every day can make a really big difference as long as it's compounded over time.
Good point. There's a good book called The Compound Effect.
And
No.
another good book called The Miracle Morning.
The Miracle Morning. I've not read that
That's a
one.
good
I remember that one.
All right, I'll have to add it into the list.
I still wake up early. Even if I read it, I'm sure.
You still won't? Is
No,
it?
I can't. I've tried so many times.
Oh, mornings are the best.
Maybe nights are your thing more, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us for today's video. We'd love to talk more about self-care tips and questions. If you have any, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We've got other videos for you to check out and more exciting things coming soon. So thank you.